What's up, YouTube? It's Dave the Gamer, and Sony just made an announcement. The PS5 Pro is coming out on November 7th. Oh no, oh no, oh no. And don't get me wrong, I'm a fan of Sony. I have all of the consoles, I have all of the games. I play majority of my games on the PlayStation 5, and I'm sitting here saying to myself, I don't really need a new console, I need more games. You know, I went through Last of Us Remastered, Part 1, Part 2, God of War, Spider-Man 2. These are showcase games for the console, for the platform. And you're telling me that those games are going to get even better, but guess what? I've already played those games. I've beat those games. Some of them I've platinumed. So it doesn't behoove me or doesn't move me to go back and play those again. So basically, you're telling me when the PlayStation 5 Pro launches that the first thing and only thing I can do is go home and put those, well, can't put those discs in. I have to get the disc drive because I bought them physical. But the first thing you're telling me to do is play my old games to see the improvement. I mean, that doesn't really sound like an enticing thing to do on, around Black Friday or the holidays, is to go and start playing 2-3-year-old games. I thought the best thing that could have happened would have been Sony's announcement was coupled with a new title, a brand new, never before seen, first time dropping this fall, dropping this holiday title that is going to be enhanced with the PS5 Pro. But they didn't do that. Why? It makes you question why. Maybe, Rockstar said, no, we don't want to show any Grand Theft Auto 6 gameplay. But even then, it wouldn't be ready for launch. So why are you bringing it out now? I understand that, Sony's a public company. They have to keep doing things to sell more, to grow their revenue. But I believe that this half-step may fail. Why? The PSVR 2, they stopped production because it wasn't selling. So you can call that a failure. And it's supposed to be the next step in virtual reality, but there's no killer titles. They're telling you to play the games like Resident Evil, Grand Theft Auto, Star Wars in VR, which they are amazing experiences. But I have an option where I don't have to get another $500 accessory to play those games and enjoy those games. So it's an add-on. It's a not necessary thing. And I'm thinking that maybe the PS5 Pro might be an add-on, not necessary thing. So maybe it might not sell as well as Sony's hoping. And furthermore, you didn't really do a good job making people want to buy it because you did not showcase anything new. If your updates and upgrades for the PS5 Pro are small details in the background of pre-existing games, I'm sorry, that's not enough to move the needle. I should be able to, without question, say, that's a PS5 Pro game, that's a PS5 game. And maybe we're at the point of diminishing returns where the technology is just not there for it to be that big of a difference. But I don't believe that's the case because Black Myth Wukong looks significantly better on the PC than it does on the PlayStation 5 platform. Now, don't get me wrong, Black Myth is still one of the best looking games that Sony has on the console, but when you see it running on PC, I'm not even going to talk about frame rates of upwards of 60 to 100 frames, but it just has a lot more polish and textures that's not capable on the PS5. But guess what? What they went over yesterday, it didn't give me confidence that it's going to be capable on the PS5 Pro either. So if the PS5 Pro is coming out in November of this year and PC cards that came out last year are still killing it, knocking it out the box, and not even necessarily the $1,000, $2,000 cards, but the mid-tier 400 or 500 level graphic cards are still running these games at higher frame rates with great textures and graphic fidelity, then I don't know what's going on or why do I need a PS5 Pro. I want to talk about the price a little bit, right? So we can't really gloss over that the fact that when these consoles came out, they dropped at $499, $500, and everyone was saying, oh my God, that's a lot of bread. And then they increased in price. So the Sony PlayStation 5 went up from $499 to $549, and I believe furthermore, higher than that in Europe and other regions. And people are still saying to this day, where are the games? You walk into any place that has physical games, which I always do, and you look at the wall and you see that there's maybe 4 or 5 across, up and down of PS5 games, and it's been 4 years. That's about 60 titles at one time, right? So if there's 60 titles and you're sitting there saying to yourself, well, majority of these are sequels or remasters or games that aren't really pushing the generation, meaning they're like simpler games that can be played even on your PS4 even, then why do I need to go out and get the next generation? We haven't really gotten into this generation. And I think that offering it at $699 is a shock to the system because it's $200 more than the PS5. No disk drive, and I'm going to keep saying that because at least if it had a disk drive, then people could say, okay, well, it has a disk drive. But no, the disk drive is an add-on to that. So you're talking about $700 plus $80 plus a controller, because we all know about stick drift. You're going to need two new ones at least. You're talking about $900 plus tax. I live in New York, so taxes are a lot. And you're talking about going home day one with your brand new $900 system, and they're asking you to play your old games again. Do you see where that doesn't really sit well? So maybe a lot of us, myself including, is going to wait until there's a game that's actually pushing the system. Because I believe right now, probably only Black Myth Wukong will push it, but there's still going to be patches and updates, and it's going to take a couple of months for them to figure out how to really make it shine. I'm not going to go back and play Ratchet and Clank, which was a launch title, I believe, or, Last of Us remastered again. So I'm going to wait to see what titles come out. And not only that, they take advantage of the PS5 Pro because reflections are cool and ray tracing are cool and frame rates, solid frame rates are definitely important. But are you giving me more enemies, more lush environments, things that I'm not used to seeing? The PlayStation 5, this generation, has given us a lot of great looking games. A lot of them. So you're telling me that they're going to look even better? I'm not too sure about that. It's important to highlight that when a new console comes out, and yes, this isn't technically a new console, but to the consumers, if your messaging isn't where it needs to be, they might consider it a new console, and then they might be disappointed when they notice that, they're not really getting anything more out of it than they got previously. I was in GameStop the other day and somebody said, hey, when's the PS6 coming out? And it was like, no, it's not the PS6, it's a PS5 Pro. And they were like, what's that? That sort of messaging where the consumer's thinking that it's a new console, it's a PS6, and you give them a Pro, it tells us that you haven't really messaged this thing properly. Well, they kept it on the wraps until this week when they finally said we were ready to show it. But everybody knew that it was coming because Sony traditionally has brought out another slimmed version console throughout their lifespans of PS1, PS2, PS3. But with the PS4, they gave us the first Pro, and that essentially was a real big step because 4K gaming came in. 4K TVs came in. So while the PS4 was still chugging along, if you had a 4K TV, things started to look a little soft. So with the PS4 Pro with 4K, you were able to see the best quality of game that Sony offered, right? So they still had a differentiating factor between the normal PS4 and the PS4 Pro. And even at the time, a lot of gamers said, my PS4 works just fine, I don't need a Pro. So the Pro didn't really sell as much as maybe Sony had hoped. So why are they repeating the same thing here? They just brought out the PS5 Slim last November, which is an update to our original console, made it a little smaller, and then now you're bringing out a Pro model. You have 3 SKUs across the ecosystem with the digital plus disc, and now the PS5 Pro plus a disc drive if you want it. So in a sense, you think you're giving the consumers choice, but I think you're actually confusing most consumers that aren't really educated. When random mother walks into the store and says, hey, I need to buy a console for my kid, you're really left up to the salesperson behind the counter that's going to give them the right information. That's okay, but previous generations and other form of marketing, we were able to disseminate what's going on through television commercials, through product placement, through social, through communities, through the games. If you came out with I'm going to use Grand Theft Auto 6 as an exclusive, but it's not. But if you came out with an exclusive that had a momentum behind it, as say a Grand Theft Auto 6, everybody would come along and say, okay, well, now we know why we need to get this particular console. But without that, you're just relying on basically your fanboys to go out there and get it day one, or maybe the scalpers who would pick it up and say, hey, get a PS5 Pro for $799 instead of $699, or even $1,000 because it might be limited, and benefit off of that, when in actuality, that's not really what you guys are trying to do. Sony, who's in charge of your marketing? Who's in charge of your advertising? Like, having Mark Cerny talk for 9 minutes about the technical things that go on with the PlayStation, but not really showing how the PlayStation 5 Pro is pushing things forward, that kind of gives an impression that is it really necessary? Like, we just saw the Apple showcase showing off the new iPhone 16 with Apple Intelligence and all the new improvements on the phones and the video and things of that nature that says, hey, you guys need to have this. They made it something that's desirable for consumers. While Sony just said, hey, we're going to put it out. We know you guys are going to buy it anyway, so why even put some effort into it to gain a new audience? Because who is it for? At $699, even if you don't get the additional disk drive at the same time, say you just get it and you spent $750 in November, you take it home, you plug it in, what do you have to play? They're telling you to play your old games. Even the new Call of Duty will be out by then, and you've been playing it on your PS5, and then when you plug it in, you put on your PS5 Pro, expecting to be wowed. The details are going to be so minuscule that I don't know if you're going to be able to justify your new $700 purchase. And I think when you launch a new product, we used to see that software sells hardware. They went hand in hand. But somewhere along the line, all of the platform holders, Microsoft, Sony, even Nintendo, they've released hardware, but they haven't had software to couple with it to basically push the system. They're showing us that ray tracing in Gran Turismo is going to be, even better. Gran Turismo looks excellent, even in virtual reality, which Sony just continued production on the PSVR 2. Why? Because people aren't running out and buying that $500 accessory. Why? Because there's no killer titles that are backing up that says, hey, I need to go out and get a PS5 VR 2. You know, that was supposed to be a cheaper option to a PC virtual reality experience, but the titles are just not there. The games are just not there to support it. And I believe when you do play certain games in VR, like a Resident Evil or Grand Theft or even some of the Star Wars games, you get a wowing experience, but those games can also be played without the virtual reality. So people haven't given a choice. They're going to say, I'm going to do what's easiest and best for me rather than to have an outlay of something else that's going to collect dust. Even if the PS5 Pro is a runway success at $699, which I personally don't think it's going to be. Maybe with the launch of Grand Theft Auto 6, you might see sales picking up. But if it runs away and is successful, what is that telling the other console manufacturers? That, hey, now this is a new price point. And never before had gaming been around $1,000 to enjoy. It's always been something that's affordable, that you're able to pick up a couple of games and play for a few months, trade in, give it to your friends, things of that nature, a community type gaming basis. But now, if you're pricing things at upwards to $1,000 with tax and accessories and games bundled in, then maybe some people are just going to be like, well, I don't even need it at all. And that's the opposite that you want to happen with games, because you want to keep continuously growing the fan base and have gaming and the pie get larger. But for some reason, Microsoft and Sony and Nintendo are sitting there twiddling their thumbs because they kind of said they don't know what to do to get gamers to play other things. And they've been invested in the colossal hero shooter failure Concord, which they just pulled off the shelves just last week. And gamers are telling you, we don't want that. The Justice League game, we don't want that. We want to play games that give us escapism, adventure, story. Black Myth Wu-Tang just came out and ran rampant on the industry. And they're like, why is this game from China a runway success? Because they focused on gameplay. They're pushing the graphics, even though it stutters some on the PS5. It plays awesome on the PC, but it's still one of the best looking games out there. And people say, hey, look at that. I want to play that. I can't get it on the Switch. Currently, I can't get it on the Xbox either, but they're saying in the back end that Sony has something to do with that by giving development resources to help them port it to the PS5. But whatever, right? That's a title that came out, single player, ran away, everyone loves it. And Concord, their big hero shooter that's supposed to be this money-making, generating thing for years to come, fell flat on its face. So a PS4 2 was a failure for Sony. Concord is a failure for Sony. If the PS5 Pro is also a failure, what's that going to look like in 2025 when we start seeing these games come out or these games not come out because they're making budget cuts? Ubisoft, their games are not selling. Star Wars Outlaws did terrible. The Avatar game didn't do as well as they thought it would. They have Assassin's Creed coming out this year, but they already have 2 hurdles to get crossed because it looks great. It looks like one of the best Assassin's Creed games to come along, but they have a female protagonist and a black samurai. So already you have roadblocks for the masses saying, hey, I want to play that. But if the game is actually really good, then you'll see sales of that pick up. But that's still not a system seller. And these console manufacturers need to start making games that are system sellers. Halo's a system seller. Mario is a system seller. Zelda, Metroid, those games, we know when they come out, they're bringing the masses to them. Well, yeah, this is the first video on the channel. It's gaming news. It's about my feelings and my thoughts on the subject. There's going to be more of it. Please, if you like the content, please like, subscribe, share, do all of the things that can help this channel grow. And I'll see you next time.